Good evening, all of you. So this is a day 16. In a day 15, we are going to discuss about strings, and after that, we are going to discuss about different types of storage classes. So in a day 15, we are going to discuss about uh, string and a declaring of a string, or definitions of a string, and initialization of a string, and different types of operations can be done on a strings. That means by using a predefined library operations, or by using a user defined programs. And after that we are going to discuss about different types of storage classes. So that is about day 15. So now we'll go on to discuss today class in day 16 about functions. So in this function, I want to discuss about different types of functions in the C programming, and after that I want to discuss about definition of a function, and different types of function prototypes, and types of functions, and after that I want to discuss about parameter passing mechanism like call by value and call by reference, and after that I want to discuss about recursion and followed by some examples. So that is about the functions. So we'll go and discuss some topics today in the functions. So let us see, before I want to start with the functions. So what are the different types of functions? So in day 15 also we are going to discuss about two types of functions like string predefined library functions and user defined library functions. So similarly, in C programming, it will going to support two types of functions in the functions concepts. That is, library functions are predefined functions, and the second one is a user-defined functions. So, what is a library functions are predefined functions? So here, the library functions are predefined set of functions. Their task is limited. Their task will be limited, and a user cannot understand the internal working of these functions. So in day 15, I'm going to use a predefined library function like strlen function. So we have to use that function in our program, but you don't know how the program is going to working inside the that function. You don't know. So why? Because you are not going to write the logic of the program. So it is a built-in function, so that you are not going to understand the internal working of built-in functions. So why? Because the user just you can use that function their current running of the program, so without doing any modifications. So for example, here I am using one of the function is sqrt, square root of followed by 81. So this square root of followed by 81, which will go and give the result as a 9. So that means that you don't know how the square root function is going to working inside of this function. So you don't know what is the logic behind this square root and followed by 81, how it will go and produce the output of this function, you don't know. So why? Because it is a built-in function. So just you can use that function, you will go and find out the square root of 81. So it will go and produce the output is 9. So I hope you will be understanding what I am saying. So if you are going to use a predefined library functions, or available library functions in the C program, we have to use that functions in our C program for running of your current program without doing any modifications on that function. And similarly, once you can use that function, but the user cannot understand the internal working of predefined library functions. So why? Because it is a predefined library function, so the user cannot develop that function. That's why the user cannot understand the internal working of predefined library functions. And second one is user defined functions. So here the name indicates that user. So the function will be implemented or developed by the or created by the user only. So that's why when compared to predefined library functions, so the user defined functions can be understand the internal working of the function very easily. Why? Because the user developed these functions. So the user can understand easily what is the logic we are going to write inside of that function. The user will be know. So whereas in predefined library functions, you don't understand internal working of that function. So you have to use that function in our program so that it will go and produce the output of the given problem. So whereas in a user defined function, you have to develop our own logic. So that's why the user defined functions are easy to understand of the internal working of the functions. Now so that is about different types of functions. So user defined and predefined library functions. Now coming to definitions of a function. So what is the definition of a function? So it is a function is a self-contained block. The function is a self-contained block. So that is called as a function. So for example, uh, for example, so I will take the notepad. So in that notepad, I'm going to write void main and followed by open and closing curly brackets. So I'm going to write the void main and followed by open and closing curly brackets. So it is a function. So here main is a function in our C program. So the main is a function, and that function is defined as it is a self-contained block. So the function is a self-contained block is called as a function. I hope you will be understanding what I am saying. So here main is a function. So main is a function and it contains a self-contained block like open and closing curly brackets. So in between open and closing curly brackets, we have to write our own code. Clear? So a function is a self-contained block is called as a function. So that is about definitions of a function. So next one. So what are the advantages of using functions? So it is a modular programming language. So it is a modular programming language. So at the time of discussing about structure of a C program, we'll be going to use void main, and after end of the void main, you are going to use a user defined functions. So the user defined functions in the C language is called as a modular programming language or subprogram. The subprogram can be called as a modular programming language. So with help of that subprogram, you have to divide a large number of program into individual subprograms. So that's why so the division of work is simplified due to the divide and conquer principle. So it will be working on divide and conquer principle. So if it is a very large problem, then you have to divide that complex problem into sub problems or user defined functions. So second one is a reduction in the amount of work. So I said that it is a complex one. So you have to divide that work as a sub program or modular programming, so that we will go and solve the sub program or modular program very easily. So that means while solving of a complex problem for individually, for only single person, so if you divide that problem into number of sub problems or sub programs, then your work will be going to reduce, as well as the development time will be also reduced. So that is the advantage of using functions. And one more is program and function debugging is easier. So why? Because you are writing a subprograms. You are writing the program as a subprogram or modular programming. So that's why the debugging, you have to find out the errors in a subprogram or a main program are very easier. So that is another advantage of using functions. So next one is, I said that already. So the division of work is simplified due to the use of the divide and conquer principle. So that means if it is a large problem, that can be divided into small number of subprograms. So next one, with help of these functions, reduction in the size of the program. So due to code reusability. So why? Because if you want require the same code in some other program in our current running of the program, then we have to call the function. We have to call function in our program. So whenever you want required, without writing a duplicate code inside of the program, so you can call that function any number of times at any place in our current running of the program. So that means that we are going to reduce the program size. So why? Because you are using a code reusability. You are using a same function, you are going to call number of times. So that's why it will go and reduce the size of the program. So next one, logical clarity of the program will be clear. So why? Because it is a user defined function. So the subprogram is a user defined function. So that's why the clarity of the program will be clear. Why? Because the user is going to develop their own function or their own subprogram. That's why the logical clarity of the program will be very clear. So that is another advantage of using functions. And the last one is a library with a user defined functions can be created. So with I said that user defined functions, subprogram can be called as a user defined functions. So you have by using a user defined function, you can create a library. So you can create a number of user defined functions like as a library. So in that library it contains number of books. Similarly, you have to create in our own subprograms. So these are the different types of advantages of using functions. So now coming to function components. So this is a very important. You have to understand about different types of function components. So the different types of function components are function declaration. So first of all, you want to know what is a function prototype or how to declare the function in our C program. So after that, you want to know how we're going to pass the parameters or arguments inside of that function. And after that, you want to know what is a calling function or what is a called function. That is called function definition and function calling. So after that, you want to understand about return statements. So where you can use the return statements, you have to understand. So let me explain one by one. So the first one is a function prototype. How we'll go and write the function prototype in C program or function declaration. So this is a function declaration and as well as a function prototype which will be declared in a C program. That is called function name. We have before function name we have to use data type. So you can use the data type void. So void is nothing but the function does not return any value. So that is the meaning for void. Clear? Or you can use int followed by function name. You have to use data type before the function name. So whether it is an integer type or it is a character data type or it is a some other data types. You have to define before the function name. You have to write integer, character, or float or void data types. After that, you have to write function name, and after that, you have to pass some arguments inside of the function, or you have to pass some parameters inside of the function. And after that, you can write open and closing curly brackets in between open and closing curly brackets, you have to write your variable declaration, and after that you have to write your statements, and after that you can write return statements in the function. So this is a function prototype or function declaration. So this is a function prototype or function declaration. First you need to understand about how we are going to declare the function, and what is the function prototype which will be used in the C program. So this is a prototype, function prototype, you have to use it. So this is an example. So I said that before, the function is a subprogram or user defined function. So that can be write after the main function. So after writing of the main function, you have to define your user defined function. So that means that after first you need to complete the writing of the main function. After end of the main program, you have to write separately a user defined function or subprogram. So this is a function declaration or function prototype. So void main, so it is a general main function. So inside of main function you can use function calling. So instead of the main function you can use function calling and followed by some parameters or some arguments. And how can say it is a function calling? So the function does not have any body. So here ABC is a function. So ABC is a function name and it does not have any body. So if the function does not have any body, then it is called as a function call or calling function, and it will be terminated by semicolon. So the calling function or the function call which will be terminated by semicolon, and it does not contain any body of the function. So the calling function can be write inside of the main function, and after that where you can write called function or function definition. So that will be right after the main program. So you have to write the called function or function definition after the main function. So I am writing here uh, function called function. It is a called function. Why? Because it contains body of the function. I hope you will be understanding what I am saying. So the calling function can be right inside of the main function, and it does not contain any body of the loop. So it will be simply terminated by semicolon. So that's why it is called as a function call or calling function. So that can be right inside of the main function. And similarly, what are the arguments or what are the parameters you can pass inside of the calling function? So that can be called as a actual arguments or original arguments. So what are the arguments or what are the parameters you can pass inside of the calling function? That arguments can be called as a actual arguments or original arguments. So now I am writing a called function after the main function. So why it is called as a called function? So because it contains body of the function. So it contains body of the function, that is open and closing curly brackets. So whereas in what is the function you are declaring in main function, it does not have any body. So that's why it is called as a function call or function calling function. So in that you have to pass only actual arguments or original arguments. So whereas in a called function you have to pass arguments. That arguments can be called as a formal arguments and also called duplicate arguments for the original one. I hope you will be understanding what I am saying. So if it is a called function, so it contains body of the loop. So that the called function can be write after the main program. So after writing of a main program, you have to write the called function, and what are the arguments or what are the parameters you can pass inside of the function called function, that can be called as a formal parameters or duplicate values of the original one. And after that in a call function you have to use return statement. So whereas in a calling function you don't use return statements. You don't use the return statements in a calling function. So it will be simply without body and it will terminate by semicolon. So whereas a function definition or called function, it contain body and followed by it contain return statements. So that is only the difference between calling function or called function, or function declaration or function definition. So definition, define. So function definition is nothing but you have to define the function. That means you have to write the logic inside of that function. So that's why it is called as a function definition, or it is called as a call function. So whereas here I am writing function call. So you are not going to define anything. Just you can call that function inside of the main program. And one more difference is that the calling function does not have any return statements. Only the call function, it contains return statements. So that is the differences between function call and function call or calling function or function declaration, and function definition or call function. I hope you will be understanding. If you are not understanding, please give a query in the chat box. I will go and explain once again. So next one is function parameters. I said that before this slide. So it contains two types of parameters. One is called actual parameters and formal parameters. So the actual parameters will be contain calling function. So instead of a calling function, we can pass the arguments. So that arguments can be called as a actual parameters or actual arguments. And what are the arguments you can pass inside of the function definition? So that arguments can be called as a formal parameters. I hope you will be understanding what I am saying. So in function calling, the parameters can be called as a actual parameters or actual arguments. In the function definition or called function, so that arguments can be called as a formal parameters. So this is a simple example. So here I am writing the main function. So instead of my main function, I am calling the add function, and the add function does not have any body. It will be terminated by semicolon, and this add function does not return any value. Why? Because it is a calling function only. So next one, I am going to implement the add body or function definition after closing of the main function. So after end of the main function, I am going to write the add method, and followed by I am passing two types of arguments. So these arguments can be called as a formal arguments, and after that I am going to use a instead of a function definition or a called function, you can use the return statements. So return a plus b. So whenever you can use a return in the called function or function definition, so the value, that is a plus b value, will be returned back to calling function. So the a plus b value, return a plus b, that means that the a plus b addition will be returned back to the main program. That is, it will back to the add function, then it will go and add x comma y terms, then it will go on to give the output of the z value. I hope you will be understanding what I am saying. So here just you have use a calling function without any body. So the function definition will be right after closing of the main program. You have to write function definition or call function. So on that function definition or call function, I am using a return statement. So the meaning for return statement is after execution of this code, it will be say that return a plus b value. So where it will be written? So the a plus b terms values will be written back to the main program here. So it will be written back to the calling function. So it contains x comma y. That means x indicate as a and y indicate as a b. Then it will go and perform x plus y. And after performing x plus y, the result value will be stored into the z value, then I'm going to print that Z value in the screen. So that is about a function parameters. So we have a two types of parameters. So the calling function parameters can be called as a actual parameters. In called function, the parameters can be called as a formal parameters. So that is only the difference here. So let us execute this code. So let us execute this code in a notepad, in a turbo C++. So I want just to copy the code so into the into notepad. So after that you can save. So I'm going to save this file into local drive under users, sorry, under turbo C++, under disk and turbo C3 under bin folder. So here I'm going to save as a like a sample. So sample function. So sample function dot c, and you can set a save as type will be all files. So this is my program name, and it will be extended with the dot c. So that will be stored into the bin folder in my turbo C3 software. Now I'm going to save. So the program is saved. Now you can open a turbo C3. So for running of C program, you have to use a turbo C or turbo C++ software. So you can go for open and start.c, and you can searching for sample. So this is a program sample function. So this is a program. So now I'm going to remove the extra content. So I'm going to remove the extra content. Now I'm going to execute the code. Before that, you can compile the program. So there is no errors in my code, and you can run the program. Enter. So now the Z value will be 3. So that is the output of the program. I hope you will be understanding what I am saying. So here in a main function I am using a calling function. So the calling function is nothing but without any logic. So it will be simply terminated by Z, sorry, semicolon. So the body of add function will be right after the main program. So it is a add is a function name, and followed by I am passing two arguments like a comma b. So these arguments or parameters can be called as a formal parameters. That means a comma b are duplicate values of x and y, and in that call function I'm using a return followed by a plus b. So that means x plus b only. So that means that x is a original value and y is a original value. Instead of that passing x and y, you can pass duplicate values are a and b. So that means a can be treated as a x and b can be treated as a y. So whenever you can say that it will be goes to return, so then the cursor will be goes to the calling function, and it will go and perform addition of x plus y, and the result will be stored into the z value, and the z value will be going to printed on the screen. So that's why I got z is equal to 3. That is x plus y, that is equal 1 plus 2. I got z value will be 3. So that is a program. So here we are writing a subprogram after the end of the main function. So that's why this can be called as a subprogram. So this can be, so up to here. So add a comma b and followed by this this can be called as a subprogram or user defined function. So the user defined function or subprogram will be right after the main function. So that is about functions. I hope you will be understanding what I am saying. So now I am going to terminate. I am going to save the program and I will come back to my PPT. So that is about function parameters. Now what is a function definition? So the function definition is nothing but called function. So this is a called function. I use the called function in my program add a comma b, and it contains body of the logic. So it contains function body. So inside of this function body you have typed the logic of the program. So the difference between a calling function and a called function or function definition is that the calling function or the function declaration, it will be simply terminated by semicolon without any body of the function. So whereas in a function definition or called function, it contains body of the function, as well as it does not ended with a semicolon, and in called function or function definition you have to use written statements. You have to use written statements. So that is only the difference between function calling or function declaration and function definition or called function. And one more is written statements. So where you can use the written statements? So you can use the written statements in only in a called function. So for example, if you don't want written any value in the given function, at that time you have to use void. So if you don't want written any arguments or any values to the main program, just you can write void. So void main. So this means that the main function does not return any value. So that's why I'm not going to write a written keyword in my main program. So whereas in the second one, I'm using a integer type of function. So my function type will be integer type. So that's why I'm writing here in my program return followed by 0. So why? Because the main function should return integer type of value. So that's why at end of my program I will write return followed by 0. Why? Because the function should return a value. I hope you'll be understanding what I am saying. So if it is a void indicates that the function does not return any value. So if it is a integer, int main, so that means that the function should return integer type of value. So that's why at end of my program you have to use return followed by 0 or return followed by 1 you have to use. So why? Because the function should return integer type of value. That's why I'm writing here 0 or 1. I hope you will be understanding about void main and int main. So that means that the function that do not have a return type. So if you don't use a return type, do not have any return statements, then you have to use void. So if the function that have a return value, if you want to return any value in the given function, at the time you have to use int. So that is the only difference between a void main function and int main function. And the last one, function call or function calling. So what is a function calling or function call? So add followed by x comma y semicolon. So the calling function or function call, it does not have any body. So that is called as a function call or function calling. And similarly, the function call or the function calling, the return type is not mentioned in the function, this calling function. So you don't want to mention return statement inside of the calling function. Why? Because it does not contain a body of the function. So it will be simply terminated by semicolon without any body of the function. So that's why it is called as a function call or calling function. And inside of this calling function, you don't use return statements. The return statements can be used only in call function only. So these are the different types of functions, prototypes. So if you want to know about functions, you must be know different types of terminologies that will be dealt by the function components. I hope you will be understanding what is a function calling, what is a called function, what is a parameters, actual parameters and formal parameters, and what is a written statements. I hope you will be understanding what I am saying. So these are the terminologies you should understand in the function concepts. Then only will be thoroughly know what I am saying in the classes. So if you have any doubts, you can post your query in the chat box. So that's all about today's session. So in the next day 17, so I'm going to discuss about types of functions. So up to now, if you have any doubts, so can post your query, and if you like this video, so can give it can click on the thumbs up button, and you can share your things in the chat box. So if you understand this lecture, you can give a response yes in the chat box. So that's all about today's session. So in the next session, we're going to discuss about different types of functions. So if you have any query, you can post it in the chat box. So otherwise, that's all about today session. We'll go and meet in the next class. Thank you.